Today, we're diving into something huge. We're talking about how to solve those massive, complex, seemingly impossible problems. And the secret, as you're about to see, isn't just about having more experts in a room. It's about a powerful method for weaving their knowledge together called integration. Let's get right into it.
So, have you ever thought about this? It's kind of a strange paradox, right? You get a dream team together, the smartest people from every field you can think of, to tackle some massive challenge. And nothing. They just talk past each other, they get stuck, and sometimes the whole thing just falls apart. Why does that happen? Well, that question is really the heart of everything we're talking about today.
To figure out why they fail, we have to look at the problem itself. And ironically, it all starts with the very thing that makes them experts in the first place. Okay, check this out, because this is the biggest barrier in action: language. You get 3 brilliant experts in a room, and you ask them to talk about efficiency. Simple, right? Wrong. The economist thinks you're talking about a mathematical ratio of inputs to outputs. The biologist is thinking about how an organism converts food into energy. And the political scientist? They're thinking about how well government services are working. They're all using the exact same word, but they're speaking completely different languages. They can't even agree on what the problem is, let alone solve it. And that's exactly where the collaboration just breaks down. So, if the problem is that all the knowledge is fragmented and broken into pieces, then the solution has to be about putting those pieces back together. And it turns out this idea of making whole is a really, really old one. And that solution is integration. The word itself tells you everything you need to know. It comes from the Latin integrare, which literally just means to make whole. See, this isn't about picking one expert's view and saying it's the right one. It's about weaving all of them together to create a picture that's so much bigger and more complete than any one person could see on their own. You know, this search to make knowledge whole has been going on forever. The ancient Greeks thought philosophy was the answer. In the medieval period, it was all about theology. Then the Enlightenment came along and said universal reason would unite everything. But notice a pattern here? They were all looking for some single perfect source of truth that was already out there. But then in the 1930s, something really important changed. And this right here, this is the big one. This is the shift that changed the whole game. We stopped looking for some single unified truth to solve everything. Instead, the goal became mastering a unifying process, an approach that we can actively build and shape to fit the specific problem we're facing. So integration isn't something you find, it's something you create.
Which brings us to the really practical question. If integration is something we have to build, what are the tools we use to actually build it?
Well, the very first tool, and maybe the most important one, is all about tackling that language barrier we talked about. And there's this fantastic analogy from linguistics that explains it perfectly. When experts first get together, they create what's called a pidgin. It's like a basic, stripped-down trade language just to get by. But that's not the end goal. The real goal is to develop a creole, a brand new, rich, stable language that becomes the native tongue for that specific project community. Now, a key way to build that new language is with something called a bridging concept. This is just a powerful idea that can connect two worlds that seem totally separate. For instance, some researchers took the idea of a medical syndrome, a bunch of symptoms that point to a single disease, and they applied it to environmental problems. And all of a sudden, something like overcultivation wasn't just a farming issue anymore. It was a symptom of a much larger Sahel syndrome, which let them diagnose and treat the root cause in a much more holistic way. So if you were going to map this out in a perfect world, it might look a little something like this. Everybody just agrees to set aside their biases. They all focus on the same big question. They pool all their knowledge together and, ta-da, a perfect integrated solution. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's a nice little 4-step process. But reality is just a little bit messier than that. Because let's be real, in the real world, experts don't just suspend their worldviews. That's kind of the whole point of being an expert. And what that means is that the actual process is never a straight line. It's a constant back and forth, a negotiation. It's a messy loop of trying things out, seeing what sticks, and then refining it all together. This move toward a messier, more realistic process happened at the same time as another huge change. Integration started to move out of the ivory tower and into the real world.
Back in the 1980s, a new distinction was made that pretty much changed everything. You had endogenous research, which is driven by questions that pop up inside the university world, but then you had exogenous research, which is driven by problems that start outside, in the real world, what some call the Lebenswelt, a German term for the life world that we all live in. This is research driven by actual community needs, not just academic curiosity. And that led to what's called the transdisciplinary leap. Here, the problem itself decides the method, not the academic departments. And this is so important. It brings new people to the table, people from the community, from industry, from government. The goal isn't just to write a paper anymore. It's to create a practical, real-world solution, like a new policy, a new technology, or a plan for sustainable development. Okay, so we've walked through the history and the tools. Now let's boil it all down. After decades and decades of studying this, it turns out there are 4 core principles for actually making integration work. Let's break down what they are. First up, and this might be the most important one, is the principle of variance. Basically, there is no magic formula. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. The method you use has to be flexible and perfectly tailored to the specific problem, the specific people in the room, and the specific context you're in. Number 2 is the principle of platforming. Integration isn't something you can just tack on at the very end. It won't work. You have to intentionally build the foundation for it from day one and maintain it through the project's entire life. You're building a platform for collaboration to happen. Third, we have the principle of iteration. Remember that messy reality we talked about? This is it. The process is a loop, not a straight line. You have to be willing to go back and forth, to test ideas, to fail, and to constantly refine your shared understanding as you go. And finally, number 4 is what some call communicative rationality, but really it all just comes down to the people. At the end of the day, the success of the project has less to do with what any single person knows and everything to do with how well the group communicates. A brilliant solution is always the product of a brilliant conversation. It's about a team that learns how to make sense together. So what does all this mean for us? It means integration is not some weird niche skill just for academics anymore. The ability to connect different kinds of knowledge, to build those bridges, is now just as fundamental as knowing how to read or use a computer. It has become an absolutely essential skill for anyone who wants to solve the problems that really matter. Think about it. The world's biggest challenges, climate change, global health, you name it, they are all, by their very nature, deeply complex and interconnected. They demand integration. They demand that we build bridges between all these different ways of knowing. So the only real question left is, how are you going to build yours?